I had noticed them off and on throughout the evening. Two guys were hanging out in a booth, and one of them would occasionally approach one of the other tables, while guy number 2 stayed put and nursed his drink. Typically, the tables the guy approached were all women. They'd say a few words and sometimes he'd leave quickly, but sometimes he'd pull out an envelope and show some documents or pictures I couldn't tell which. I assumed they were selling something. And I was surprised that the management hadn't put the keybows on it. I mentioned it to the people I was with that night. Chrissy, my wife of 2 years, and our friends Chris and his wife Liz and Hines and his wife Kim, we speculated for a few minutes about what we thought they were doing and then put it behind us. It was maybe 30 minutes later that guy number 1 finally approached our table. I assumed he had exhausted all of the tables that were exclusively, or at least primarily, female, and it looked like we were finally going to see what was going on. "Good evening, folks. How are we all doing tonight?" Our responses of great and fine came out as a jumble, and he just looked at each of us and smiled, and then continued his spiel. "My friend over there is in town for the weekend on business and looking for a little company tonight and wanted to see if any of you ladies might be interested." I was stunned at this guy's bravado. I mean, really, to approach a table where each of the women have obviously spoken for and right in front of their men, ask if they'd like to go off somewhere and have sex with his buddy. I was just about to let him know exactly how I felt and where he could go when Liz took the lead and just, why would any of us want to do something like that? She asked, "Well, you see, my friend is something of a freak of nature. He has something really thick and he knows how to use it, so I thought one of you might be interested in taking it for a spin." The girls were all but laughing at him at this point, but he seemed entirely unaware. Perhaps all of the rejection had made him immune to it. It was Kim that took the next step and probably really caused the problems that were about to follow. And how do we know he's really that well equipped? The guy pulled out the well-worn envelope that he had been using all night, and we finally got to see what was in it. He took out several pictures, all apparently of his friend, and all making it quite evident that he had not exaggerated his friend's endowment. At this point, all of us guys were letting the girls have their fun and waiting for them to send this creep packing. The girls were visibly impressed by what they saw in the pictures. They UD and awed loudly, almost comically. And Chris Hines and I were amused at how they were working this guy. Then he made the big offer. "So what do you say, ladies? Any takers? You won't regret it." Liz and Kim just shook their heads and giggled while handing the guy back his pictures, which he slid back into the envelope. It looked like he was about to go on his way and try his luck somewhere else when he stopped and looked at Christy. Maybe he saw something in her eyes he had seen before, but he made a point of specifically asking her again, "What about you, little lady?" "I didn't see you shake your head." I sat there confidently and dumbly, as it turned out, waiting for Chris to put this guy in his place. So when she spoke, I wasn't really paying attention to her as much as I was watching for his reaction, but his reaction was not what I expected. Instead of a frown or even a straight face, he burst into a huge grin and walked around to where Chris was sitting. It took a moment for my brain to process that she had said, "I'll go," by the time I got my wits about me. He had whisked her away from the table and was walking her toward the exit. I don't know if they had a signal or guy number 2 just knew the signs, but he was already headed for the door as well. Our friends were seemingly as shocked as I was. It looked like they were trying to say something to Christy, but no sound was coming out. As shocked as I was, I did manage to take some action, and they got about halfway to the door before I took hold of Christy's arm and pulled her away from him. Just what in the hell do you think I started before a hand about twice the size of mine that was attached to an arm that was the biggest one I had ever seen grabbed my arm, squeezing so tight I had to let go of Christy. "Sorry, pal," the behemoth said, "but I can't have you manhandling the ladies. This is my wife." I objected. "I'm just trying to stop her from leaving with these guys." His grip on my arm never loosened. He knew he had me well under control. I was a decent-sized guy, but this guy was NFL offensive lineman big and clearly had the strength to match as well. He simply turned to Christy. "Ma'am, are you leaving of your own free will?" he asked her. Christy looked at me, mouthed what appeared to be the words, "I'm sorry," and then said to the bouncer that she was indeed leaving of her own free will. He turned back to me, the pity evident in his eyes. "Look, pal, I'm sorry about whatever is going on here in your marriage, okay? But my job is to make sure there's no violence. She says she's leaving with him on her own, and as long as you're on our property, I can't have you putting your hands on her like that." He was still holding me when she got up on her tiptoes and whispered something in his ear. He gave her a strange look, then looked back at me and then back to her again. "Are you sure that's what you want?" he asked her. Christy looked back at me and then seemed to make an internal decision, then turned back to the bouncer with more confidence than she had shown this entire evening. Said yes. I'm sure with that, she turned and walked toward the guys who were patiently waiting by the door to see how this played out. "Christy, stop, come back," I desperately called, but she never wavered. I could only watch as she joined up with the two men and headed out the door. I assumed that as soon as they were out the door, that man Mountain here would release me, and I could chase them down because I had no intention of letting that happen if I could help it. So as soon as the door closed, I tried to pull away, only to find myself still firmly held in place. "What the hell, man, they're off your property, so let me go." I was fruitlessly pulling against him, trying to break free, but making absolutely no progress. Finally, I stopped and looked at him with a well look on my face. "Look, man, I really am sorry, but she asked me to hold you here for another few minutes so you couldn't follow them, and the parking lot is still technically our property." With the realization that not only had Christy voluntarily gone away with these two guys to have sex with them, but had asked the bouncer to hold me back, all of the fight drained out of me. Our friends were standing there waiting to see what would happen, still seemingly in shock at the evening's turn of events. After a couple of minutes, the bouncer gently released my arm, and I could actually feel the blood start to flow through my veins again. When he did so, I simply collapsed onto the floor, briefly catching the look of pity on the bouncer's face before he turned and walked away I hadn't noticed before. But the sound level in the bar had dropped to nothing as my drama unfolded. Realizing the show was over, the peripheral conversation slowly resumed. I sat on the floor, completely devastated, tears rolling down my face that I hadn't been aware of before. How could she have done something like this? Didn't I make her happy? Wasn't I enough for her? Obviously, the answers were no, and that realization gave me something actionable. Chris and Hines helped me to my feet and led me back to our table where Kim and Liz tried to SU the pain I was feeling at Christy's abandonment and humiliation of me. But then I looked up and saw Christy's empty chair, and I was galvanized into action. I tossed $40 onto the table and turned for the door. "Wait, you're leaving?" asked Kim. "Of course, there's no reason for me to stay here, and besides, I've got things to do." "What about when Christy gets back?" Liz contributed. "What about it? Aren't you at least going to wait to make sure she's okay?" "No, but I'm sure she'd appreciate one of you taking her in for the night. I need to go." As I walked away, I heard the girls asking the guys to stop me and the GU saying, "No way, not after what she did." I kept my eyes focused on the door, not wanting to see how sorry for me everyone in the bar was. I managed to get to my car before the emotions overwhelmed me again. I got dizzy and very nearly passed out, so I just sat in the driver's seat for several minutes until I felt well enough to drive home. As I sat there, I thought how ironic it was that her impulsive nature had been one of the things that attracted me to her in the first place. I was about halfway back to our apartment when my phone rang with Christa's number on the caller ID. My first thought was that she had changed her mind and needed my help, so I answered the call without any niceties and went right to trying to help her. It turns out I was wrong. "Where are you, Christy? I can come get you. Which hotel and what's the room number?" "Henry." Baby thinking she doesn't want me to go to the room, I changed my tack. "Can you get away? Just give me the hotel and I'll pick you up outside." "Honey, please listen to me, baby. I'm not leaving. I want to stay, and I just wanted to call and tell you that I hope you understand this has nothing to do with you or how much I love you. It's just something I have to do, and I'd like you tell me you understand and that it's okay, Christy. Please don't do this. I have to, Henry, but it won't hurt us. It's just one time, and it won't be anything but sex." I promise at this point, I was completely numb. Not only did she walk out on me in front of our friends in an entire bar, but now she calls me to rub my face in it and has the gall to ask me to tell her I'm okay with it. I couldn't believe the woman I had fallen in love with was treating me like this. I realized that there was nothing worth fighting for, so I told her I understood, but I meant it far differently than she thought I did. She was clearly excited. "Oh, thank you, baby, thank you. I'll see you as soon as I'm done, and I'll spend the rest of my life showing you how much I love you with that." The call disconnected, and all of the sadness and depression I was feeling suddenly went away. I had blocked out the love I had for her just a few hours before, and it was replaced by a grim determination to put this behind me. As soon as I got to my apartment, I pulled out my luggage. We each had our own set from before we were married and spread all 3 suitcases out on the bed. We didn't have much stuff, and what was mine was far less than what was Krista's. I believed it would all fit in these 3 cases, but if not, I was pretty sure anything I needed to leave behind wouldn't be missed. I took my time. I had no plans to simply disappear. In fact, I was looking forward to her feeling as much pain when I walked out the apartment door as I felt when she walked out of the door of the bar, and she would have to be here for me to experience that I had 2 suitcases, completely full, and was midway through the last one, and I was beginning to think I'd have to actually wait for her when I heard the front door open and then shut, quietly. I guess she saw the lights were on, so knew. I was awake, and she called to me. "Have a good time," I called. I guess I hadn't injected as much sarcasm as I thought because she answered as if she was just coming back from a party or something. Oh God, did I ever... She walked through the bedroom doorway and I glanced back at her. Her hair and makeup was a mess, and her clothes looked a little worse for wear. She looked in the parliament satisfied. The smile on her face quickly faded when she saw me packing. What are you doing, baby?" Moving out and filing for divorce, she came over to me and tried to stop me from putting anything else into the suitcase, and I wrapped my hand around her wrist and removed it. It reminded me of the bouncer grabbing my arm, and I was suddenly pissed all over again. "Don't touch me." "But, Henry, you said you understood that this was just a one-time thing that I needed to try and then I'd be all yours." "No. What I understood was that you were going to enjoy with those guys no matter what I said or how I felt. So there was no point in wasting my time talking about it anymore. You did screw both of them, right? Not just Mr. Big Mate." "Well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have been fair to leave Desmond hanging after he did most of the work. Of course, wouldn't want the a-hole preying on married women to suffer this time." My sarcasm could be seen from space. "Maybe please don't leave me. I just had always wanted to try one that big, but I never had the chance before we met. Plus, I've never been with a big endowed guy before. When Desmond showed me the picture, I just couldn't stop myself from going for it, but now I've done it and it's over, and I'm yours forever, and I'll do anything to make it up to you. First of all, Christ, you were already supposed to be only mine forever. That was part of that whole wedding thing a couple of years ago. So you promising it to me again after breaking that promise once already means nothing. And just how exactly do you make up something like this? Do you have any idea how inadequate this all makes me feel? But I'll give you a chance. Just tell me the hotel and room number where they took you, and I promise I'll think about putting this behind us. No guarantees, though. I'm sorry, baby, but I won't tell you that I resumed my packing. Take a print out of your sorry roll it and shove it up your bum, honey, please. If I tell you where there you'll go do something dangerous, and I don't want you to get hurt after all. There are 2 of them, and besides, they aren't worth getting into trouble over. That's not your decision to make, Christy. I'm the one that gets to decide what I'm going to do and what it's worth. So I'll ask you one more time, hotel and room number." "I'm sorry, baby. But when we got married, I promised to protect you, and I will, even from yourself. I won't let you get hurt unless you're the one doing the hurting." Apparently, that seemed to strike home as intended. "Fine, Christy, but just remember that this was your choice." I finished packing even as Christy continued trying to get me to stop and stay with her, though she no longer tried to stop me physically. No matter how many times I told her I wouldn't stay with her, she kept trying to convince me it was just sex and something she had to do. But she loved only me. When she finally got to the classic, it meant nothing. I had had enough. Well, it goddamn well meant something to me, Christy. Our sex life was very precious to me. I didn't realize it meant so little to you, but it was one of the things that made you special, that I was the only one that got to experience your body, and you just gave it away. And not only that, you did it in the most humiliating way possible. We were out with our best friends, for God's sake. I know that, baby, and I'm sorry, but I swear it'll never happen again. I just went a little crazy there for a while, but now I've done it, and it's out of my system. But what else is there? What do you mean, what else is there that you haven't tried, that you might just have to one day? A threesome, a gangbang, pulling a train, taking on the offense from the local college. Goddamn, Christy, I can't believe that you did what you did. That entire bar was just staring at me with pity and shame while you walked out of there without even looking back at me. She was openly crying by this point. If I looked back, I don't think I would have been able to go through with it, and I was determined. But please, baby, please don't leave me. I love you so much if that's how you express love. I'm not interested. Frankly, even if you had told me where to find them, there was no way I was going to stay. I may one day forgive you, Christ, But I will never ever forget what you did, and more importantly, how it made me feel. It took 2 trips, but I got my suitcases loaded into my car and drove away when I went back. The second time, Christy was still collapsed on the floor. All she could manage was to look up at me as I came in and mumble, "Please, please don't go, baby. Please," despite what had happened, what she had done. I still felt like a complete leaving like this. It didn't cause me to reconsider, but I still felt bad. I assumed it was because, while there was no way I could still be with her, I still sure as hell still loved her. I was disoriented when I woke up in the hotel. I had been more tired than I thought. I guessed the adrenaline wore off, and once it did, I crashed hard. It was nearly noon before I woke up. Fortunately, I had paid for 2 days in advance, but I knew the bank account wouldn't support a hotel stay for long. I needed a place to stay. One problem was the 3 months left on the lease of the apartment Christy and I had shared there. Certainly wasn't enough to pay for that in a new apartment, so I'd have to decide whether or not to just take the hit and abandon the apartment, or come up with some other plan. The fact was that Chris and I had very little in terms of assets. We each had a car in our names and payments to go with them, so that was likely a wash. The bank account was small, and beyond that was just the furniture we had bought, and I didn't particularly care for it. I didn't hate it. I just didn't care. I hated to put any of the other couples into the middle of things, but Chris and Hines had been my best friends for years, predating all of our wives. Chris and Liz had been married for 5 years. Hines and Kim for almost 4. Christ and I had been the last ones to join that particular club. I finally managed to turn my phone back on, finding lots of messages from Christy and several from the guys and their wives. Mostly they were urging me not to do anything rash, and one message from Chris offering to do anything they could to help spoke to me. So I called, getting Liz on the phone, and asked for marital sanctuary. "I'll make you a deal, Henry. You can stay in our guest room for a while, but I won't hide you from Christy. She's been driving everyone crazy, asking if we've heard from you. I'll let her know you're here and that you're okay, and I expect you to be at least civil to her. Yes, she made a mistake, but she didn't murder anyone. So let's keep it all in perspective, okay?" I agreed to her terms and spent the next morning moving from the hotel to their spare room. My boss was okay with me taking the morning off as long as I stayed late some night this week to make up for it. Such compassion. I went ahead and worked late that night to get it out of the way, and it had the added bonus of distracting me from the weekend's events. It was nearly 10 o'clock when I pulled up to Chris and Liz's house. I was tired and ready for some decent rest. Of course, that didn't happen. "Chrissy, why are you here? Did you not understand when I left that I didn't want to see you?" "I'm sorry, baby, but I'm hurting without you there. I can't sleep, and I can't eat. We need to hawk so we can try and work this out. I told you I wasn't interested in working it out, but I guess what I want stopped matching deal." "Okay, I deserve that, but please, baby, please don't end us just because I made a stupid choice. We love each other, and we can get past this somehow. I don't know how to make it up to you, but please give me a chance. I gave you the chance that night, Christy. I asked where those guys were, and you refused to give it up. My only chance was getting some of my pride back, and you denied me the chance. Right now, I need you to leave me alone so I can decide if I even have any feelings for you anymore. Don't say that, baby, please. I was stupid. Okay, really, really stupid, but should one bad choice ruin our lives together? Christy, wars have started over decisions less stupid than the one you made, and frankly, I don't think you have one clue how bad you hurt me now. I promised Liz I'd be civil to you, but my ability to do that right now has ended. I need you to leave right now." Christy hung her head and slowly turned to leave. I waited in the living room while Liz met her in the kitchen. They hugged and whispered something to each other, and then Christy left, pausing at the door just long enough to turn and tell me she loved me, and then she was gone. My fortitude failed me, and I collapsed on the couch. Liz sat next to me while Chris stood in the doorway of their hallway. I had no idea how long he'd been there. "You did great." "Henry, thank you for being as kind as you were. I know it wasn't easy. I don't deserve this, Liz. I'm a good guy, and I tried to make her happy. I shouldn't have to suffer like this." "No, you shouldn't. And even though it's her fault, she's suffering too. She never imagined you'd leave her for this." "What the hell did she think I would do? She knew you'd be mad, but she thought in time it would blow over. She thought you'd be pissed off, and she'd have to do everything right to show you how much she loved you and probably spend the next however long screwing you over and over again, so she thought about this. She actually thought about how much she thought she could get away with. No, Henry. This all happened after it was done. What did she tell you, Liz? She told me the same thing she told you, that the combination of doing a well-endowed guy and his having a big tool was just too much for her to refuse. Her mind was focused only on that she would never have been able to have that bouncer hold you back otherwise. Damn, that pissed me off. Was the sex at least terrible? Do you want me to tell you the truth or what you want to hear? I guess that answers the question, never mind. But Henry, as good as she says the sex was, she says she would never trade what you guys have for that. It was fine one time, but that's all. But she did trade me for that, but she didn't know that's what she was doing. Well, we all make choices, and when we do, we choose the consequences, even if we don't know what those are. You're right. But afterward, when she was thinking more rationally about what she had done, she still thought you guys could get past it. She figured if she treated it like it was no big deal, like it was fun, but that was all. And it meant nothing to her that you'd be mad, but you'd get over it, Kim. And I hope so too, but Chris and Hines both said there was no way. I guess they were right. They know me well. Liz, I can't see any way past this. She was so deliberate in doing it, leaving right in front of me and having me held back so she could make her get away. Then she called me to try and get me to give her the okay. She had so many chances to see that I was not okay with this, and she chose against me every single time. I know it seems that way, but she wasn't in her right mind. You know, it was like some kind of temporary insanity. Haven't you ever done something like that where you just lost sight of what could happen, Liz? I can appreciate you going to bat for her. I know you guys have become good friends, and I would expect nothing less. I'm your friend too, Henry, and I know how much you love her, be that. As it may, this isn't the same thing as when I played video games all night instead of doing that essay for history class. We're supposed to be grown-ups, and anyone should know that what she would end the way it has in my mind. I know you're right, but my heart says you two are so good together and thinks that if you can get past this and forgive her, you'd be so happy. Maybe you're right, Liz, but more likely I'd spend all my time wondering what was going to happen next. I'd never want to go out to a club again for fear something like this would happen again. Since she obviously can't control her base or desires, I'm just going to live like that. She made her choice, and now I have to do what's right for me. If you'll excuse me, I'm tired and need some sleep. The rest of the story with Christy is predictable. I'll give her credit for making every effort she could to bring us back together, but I was completely resistant to it. It was hard because I still loved her, and when you get a divorce, you just don't lose a wife. You lose all the hopes and dreams you had and all the plans you made. We had talked about kids and even grandkids. We talked about the places we wanted to visit and all the things we wanted to do before starting a family. Now that was all gone. None of it would happen, at least not for us together. In fact, it was at those times when I thought about these things that the draw for us to stay together was the strongest. Christy and I had been so in tune with each other in terms of these things, like we were two halves of the same whole, but I just couldn't find a way past what she had done. The divorce was final 3 months later. Christy asked if she could speak to me one more time. There were no requirements of me. It was just a request, and I decided I could listen to what she had to say. We met up right after the hearing and were given a private room to use. We stood facing each other. Henry, I don't know if I said this at the time, but I'm sorry. Please don't think that what I did meant I didn't love you with all my heart. I suppose how much we loved each other gave me the idea that I could do what I did, and we'd be fine anyway. I just wanted to say one more time that I was sorry, and I'll regret it the rest of my life. I too regret, Christy. I regret the day I met you. I regret the day I proposed you for marriage. I regret the day we got married. I regret that you were still so delusional that even now you had no idea what would be the consequences of your actions. I will move on. Okay, I still wish you nothing but the contempt and despise. I hope you grow a brain and use it to make decisions rather flowing with your desires to experiment. I was choking up a bit and went silent. I wasn't regretting my decision so much as regretting all that had happened. I walked out of the room. We never spoke ever again, let alone touched each other, and I admit it felt good. It was another 3 months before I started going out again. I had no intentions of trying to meet anyone right now, but I was tired of sitting at home. I had some nights out with Chris and Hines, and also some that included Liz and Kim. They tended to bring a friend along they thought I might like, and they weren't very subtle about their intentions while I wasn't ready for anything serious. Yet I did enjoy having different ladies to speak to and dance with. I allowed myself to have some no-strings-attached fun. And by that, I mean we all talked and danced, and I didn't worry about doing or saying the wrong thing because I wasn't trying to impress anyone. They were all nice, but there was no spark. And when the night ended, so did our relationships. I had also gotten into the habit of going out alone. Sometimes I was finding some comfort in the solitude, not that I was alone, since the club was usually plenty busy, but none of them were my responsibility. And I enjoyed that one of the bartenders at the club, and that is the same club in which my life had changed so drastically, was a woman named Tasha that I had gone to high school with. She had worked here for some time, though she wasn't there that night. That night we were acquaintances at best before. But on those nights that I came in alone, we started building what looked like a friendship, and she made it clear she'd like more one day down the road. It was about 10 months after Christy had left the bar with those guys that I actually ran into them again. They were in the club again, and I imagined they had plans to run their little scheme again, though at the moment, they were just sitting and drinking and looking around, probably scouting out targets. I surmised Tasha caught me looking in their direction and asked about my interest. "Why are you staring at Desmond and Richard?" I turned back to her, surprised that she knew their names. "You know them. Sure, they come in here all the time." "Do you know them, not personally?" "How do you mean all the time? I was under the impression that they were from out of town and only came here occasionally on business. I don't know where you got that, but they work at the supply warehouse downtown, the one just off the freeway. So they live locally." "Yep, have for years. I don't know where exactly, but it certainly wouldn't qualify as out of town. They come in here to pick up on women, and they do pretty well. Apparently Richard there is sporting a cannon between his legs." I looked back at her with a "why in the hell would I want to hear that" look on my face, but she seemed oblivious. "I didn't realize this was a pickup spot. You don't get a lot of single women in here, do you?" "We do pretty good, actually, but they tend to be in groups. But it's not like those guys limit themselves to single women. I actually think they prefer getting the married ones." I was trying really hard not to get so pissed that I gave away why I was so interested. Seems risky. I can't imagine the husbands are very happy about that. I don't think the husbands ever find out the guys aren't into bragging, and I doubt the wives are going home and telling them about it. Okay. Maybe some are. I hear there are people into that, but in general, I think it's all pretty hush-hush. You don't seem to be bothered by it. I don't really see the harm. Wifey gets to have a little fun, and hubby's none the wiser, so it doesn't hurt him if she's out with friends. Then she wasn't going to be home with him anyway, so he hasn't really lost anything. I imagine those hubbies get some pretty decent guilt sex. So if anything, they're coming out ahead. I was thinking on what she had just said, and knew at that moment nothing would happen between us if she was okay with. Otherwise doing it, she probably wouldn't think twice about doing it herself. That was too bad. Tasha continued talking when I didn't respond to my knowledge. They only did it once to a woman while her husband was in the club that turned into a big thing and nearly got violent. So they haven't done that again. I was off that night. But it was a good thing Victor was here. I heard the wife actually asked him to hold the husband so she could leave with the guys. I turned back to her very slowly, and I can only imagine what she saw on my face and in my eyes. At that moment, yes, she did. As a matter of fact, my tone and my facial expression must have somehow put things in line for her, because she suddenly put two and two together. Her hand flew up to her mouth, and that gesture that women always seem to make when they're surprised. "My God, Henry, that was you and Christy, wasn't it? I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I had heard she cheated on you, but I didn't realize." She stopped suddenly, apparently not knowing what else to say. I mean, really, what else was there? I got up from the bar and made my way outside, pulling out my cell phone. As I did so, I made a quick phone call to get the ball rolling and then sat outside to wait. I hadn't realized the need I had for revenge until I found out that it was all a scam. Sure, Christy accepted their offer and went with them willingly, and nothing would change that. But I think she did so with the impression that these were really just a couple of guys out of town looking to get lucky, and we would never see them again. And that would somehow make it better. I had zeroed in on their car in the parking lot, not to reinforce a cliche, but when I saw the Cadillac and the parking lot that had been lowered and had some audacious chrome rims on them, I was pretty certain that was theirs, since they hadn't yet begun their hunt. I was pretty sure I had some time before they came out, unless they had pretty early. I don't know exactly what happened inside the club, but it was almost an hour before they finally emerged, a conquest being steadily propelled in my direction. Yep, I had guessed it right on the wheels, and I was leaning on the driver's side door when they got there. "Hey man," said Desmond, who was apparently the spokesperson for this dynamic duo, You want to get your hands off of my ride." I ignored him and focused my attention on the slightly tipsy friend they had made inside, as much as she might deserve whatever would come her way. I didn't want to see a woman hurt, and I felt confident that her husband didn't deserve it either. Oh yeah, I could see the band on her finger from here. I spoke directly to her in a tone that made it clear this wasn't a request, sweetheart. I think you better find somewhere else to be, like maybe home with your husband. You know, the guy you promised to forsake all others for. I don't know exactly what she did afterward, but after taking a quick look around at the situation, she decided to follow my advice, and the last I saw of her was her backside as she went back into the club over Desmond and Richard's suggestions after she was gone. The guys seemed a little pissed off, and they turned to me with murder in their hearts, if not in their intent. What the hell, man? Why'd you run our meet like that? That wasn't your woman. She was her husband's, and all I did was remind her of that. Do I know you, man? You look familiar, we've met, but it's been a while. Say maybe 10 months, for whatever else he was. Desmond was clearly not stupid. I could see him searching his memory, and it didn't take long for him to come up with the answer. I know who you are, Richie. It's that chick's husband, the one that the lady told the guy to hold back so she could get some of us say, "Where is she?" I wouldn't mind getting a piece of that again, and since you ran off our fun, then you owe us a replacement. Sorry, guys, she lives a long way away these days. Did you guys split up? That's a damn shame. I was not impressed with their sincerity. Well, once she went with you, I didn't want her back. So what's this about you thinking you need a little payback, a little revenge or something? You think you can take the two of us? They started moving toward me. Their intention's pretty clear, probably not. But then I don't intend to, at least not alone. The idiots were so focused on me that they didn't notice my friends coming up behind them, and suddenly they both found themselves firmly held by 3 of my friends. Each they both started to struggle, but Heinz is big and strong, and Rick, another friend of mine, was equally so, and it wasn't long before they were on their knees, with their arms zip-tied behind their backs. Suddenly, they were less confident. Look, man, all we did was make the offer. Okay, she's the one that took us up on it. We just wanted some action, man. And she said yes. We didn't force her to do anything. She's the one you should be pissed at. Oh, I was, but I've dealt with her sheck. Not my problem anymore, but you and guys like you are a damn plague on society, and I intend to see that you never do it again. Load him up, boys. My friend hoisted the 2 into the bed of Jed's pickup truck, securing their legs together and channing them to the side in case they tried to make a jump for it. And about an hour later, we came to a stop in a nice remote part of the county. Jed's family had a farm not too far from here, and he had led us along a long gravel and dirt road that led us into a large grove of trees. We were miles from anything and completely out of sight of anyone. The guys dragged our victims out of the truck, being less than careful. I was enjoying the fear in their eyes. I imagine they never thought hunting down a little recreational sex would put them in the situation they found themselves, unexpected consequences, just like Chrissy. So I said with a lighthearted tone to my voice that hopefully made them think I was less serious than I was, "The question is how best to rid society of your predatory habits. I've been trying to decide how best to rid the female population of you too. My first inclination is to simply cut your tools off, bandage them up, and send you on your way." They expressed horror at my even making this suggestion. I continued, "But that could create all sorts of problems. If you decide to talk about what happened, and really, when you went to the doctor, you'd almost have to say something. Am I right? There seemed to be universal agreement on this point among my friends, though Desmond and Richard were strangely silent, so my other option is to simply kill you both and be done with dead men. Tell no tales, and all that Desmond seemed even more horrified at this prospect. But the look on Richard's face suggested he'd almost rather die than live without his male appendage. I've heard that some guys' self-worth is tied entirely the size of their manhood. But come on, man. I mean, we just made the offer, man. You can't kill us for that. It was just sex, man. It ain't like she never had a different man in there. Am I right? You're not helping your case. Desmond, like I said, I already took care of her. My focus is on you. I'm tired of you thinking that you can lure married women into bed and think you can get away with no consequence. It's just because all you did was ask no. It's time that you were taught a lesson, and maybe those like you out there will change their behavior once I make an example of you. I motioned to the rest of the gang to join me in a private huddle nearby. The goal was simply to make the creeps sweat a little bit. The truth is, I'm not really a violent person, and as much as I wanted to do these guys harm, that wasn't really my intention. Well, no permanent harm anyway. We made them sweat for about an hour, and the idea was to make them think we had thought better of killing or ming them. And by the time we got back, what little fight they had seemed gone all right, guys. My friends have convinced me not to kill you or cut your tools off. Oh, thank God, spouted Desmond. However, you will not get off free. Here's the deal. Guys, you're about to get the crap kicked out of you. We will, of course, deny it and alibi each other, but if a cop even so much as stops by my house to talk about what happened to you guys, my friends will be on you, and one of the first two options will be carried out. Got it? Yeah, man? Yeah, we won't say a word, man, and I promise we will be watching you. Thanks to your driver's licenses, we know where you live, and we already know where you work. If any of my friends and I have a lot of friends sees you pulling this crap on married women again, that's it. Pick up all the singles you want, but go after a married woman, and I promise that you'll regret it. Any questions? Is there anything we can do to not get beaten anything at all? Okay, that little evil part of the brain that everyone has kicked, and right at that moment, and then I decided to give them a chance. It wasn't a good chance, but it was a chance. Sure, Desmond, I have just the thing. Desmond smiled, hopefully seeing the beating he was promised going away. All you have to do is take your buddy's tool there in your mouth until he delivers, and then let him do the same. Desmond and Richard glanced at each other and then back at me, and Desmond wasted no time in asking that the beown go ahead and commence. And they did get their beating. We had a total of 10 guys, and we took out some aggressions on them. We carefully avoided anything that might be fatal, but there were definitely some broken bones. We avoided breaking any ribs since they sometimes puncture lungs. If nothing else, they would remember this. For a long time, we drove them back to town and dumped them off on the curb near a hospital, carefully avoiding going into the parking lot and into the field for the security cameras. The next morning, we had made the news as the two victims of a beating by unidentified persons and probably a robbery gone wrong were interviewed. The cases went cold when the guys said their assailant were not familiar to them and they believed it was random, and so here we are a year after that hellish night. I somehow managed to not be entirely suspicious of all women, but it hasn't been easy. I hear through the grapevine that Christy recently met someone and they started dating. It's early yet, but apparently promising Desmond and Richard seem to have disappeared. At the very least, they no longer work in the warehouse and their apartments are empty. I suppose they're running their game in another city. I sometimes wonder if I should have saved the world from those two creeps on a more permanent basis. I think about it often, and sometimes regret the choice I made. I eventually had to find a new place to hang out. Tasha finally started getting a little more forward, and my gentle refusals didn't have the necessary effect. So I finally had to tell her that nothing would happen for us, since she saw nothing wrong with a wife getting a little strange action behind her husband's back. She tried to assure me that she wouldn't do that personally, but I simply didn't believe her. I'd rather get 2 dogs than date her. I have not planned yet, but I will eventually start dating, maybe not, dear listeners. I'd love to hear what you think, so please leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe, because once we hit the milestone of 1,000 subscribers, I've got something special in store for you.